No free feet pics around here, partner. Y'all hear this? I actually hate ASMR. You made the best decision for yourself, and it may not feel that way right now. It may feel very difficult, very isolating, but I promise you made the best decision that you ever could for yourself, because at the end of the day, you chose your mental health, your spiritual health, your emotional and your physical health over anything else, over somebody walking all over you, dismissing you, belittling you, and you chose to love yourself first, even if that meant cutting off people that you care about, because that can be difficult when you care about them, but they don't care about you enough to stop the behavior that is hurting your relationship. What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Hood Soft Life podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina, and in this podcast, we talk about navigating the challenges that come with growing up in the hood and leaving those challenges behind for a soft life. Growing up in the hood comes with its own set of challenges, but what people don't tend to tell you is not only do those challenges follow you once you've made it out physically, but they tend to intensify. So I'm bringing you along on my journey. I'm going to be honest with you about the struggles and the lessons that I'm learning to achieve a soft life. In this episode, we're going to be talking about healthy relationships and being aware of the company that you keep. So, let's get started. All right, y'all, how was your week? I hope you had a very good week. Happy Monday. A great way to start off the week if you are listening to this episode right when it drops. But if I'm going to be honest with you, last week was trash. And if you don't know, I'm a middle school teacher, and right now we are in testing season, okay? 3 days in a row of standardized testing. And something about standardized testing really does something to the children. So I have to deal with that for the rest of the day. And it's 2 weeks of that in a row. So I'm about to get ready to go into my second week of standardized testing, and I'm hoping that this will be a little bit better. And if not, I will be going to sleep at 7 p.m. like I did last week because it wore me out. Honey, today drained me, okay? So that's pretty much been my week. I haven't really done anything too crazy or anything like that. Just chilling at home after work, because when I tell you standardized testing is a beast of its own, it sure is. And nobody has time to be going out after that. Nobody wants to go out after that. At least I don't. I'm tired. I'm drained. I want to be at home. I don't even want to eat. I just want to take a shower and go to bed. That's it. But anywho, I also want to take a moment to really just acknowledge the love, the support, the vulnerability people have been sharing based off of my last episode and just talking about my polycystic kidney disease journey and diagnosis and things like that. So I really want to say thank you to all the people who have been very positive, very loving, and a special thank you and shout out to the people who have been very vulnerable and sharing their diagnosis and their experiences with things like that, whether it's polycystic kidney disease or something different. I really appreciate that people feel comfortable and vulnerable enough to share, and that's really why I talked about my polycystic kidney disease. One, because it is a part of my journey, but also because I feel like it's extremely difficult to be vulnerable, especially as an Afro-Latina woman. It can be very hard to be vulnerable in both communities, whether you're in the Latino community or the Black community. You're already kind of told, like, not to be vulnerable and not to show the softest versions of yourself because that's a sign of weakness and people can take advantage of that. And the fact that I put my vulnerability out there for people to see was a sign of strength for me, and just showing like, I'm not doing this for you, but more so for me. Number one, I'm not doing this for external validation. I'm not doing this for the comments and the likes and stuff like that. I'm doing it more so because people keep telling people who look like me that we can't be vulnerable, that we can't share our emotions, that we can't cry and stuff like that. And we are human just like anybody else. We go through experiences just like anybody else. We have feelings, we have emotions. And so to be vulnerable and to put that out on the internet for people to see, of course, there could have been people who were disrespectful. Of course, there could have been people that said ignorant stuff, but I didn't get a single negative comment. And granted, I'm also not this huge influencer or anything like that. But regardless, people were still loving, people were still supportive, people felt comfortable enough and safe enough in this space to be vulnerable. I'm just very thankful and appreciative that we have a community like that, whether we're 10,000 or 10 people or 100 people or 10,000 people, whatever the case may be. I'm just super grateful that my vulnerability has allowed other people to feel vulnerable. And I ended up posting something on my personal story about hoping that my post will allow people to be vulnerable. And I don't mean publicly. Like, you don't have to post your vulnerability on the internet the way that I did at all. More importantly, like, I hope that it inspires people to feel comfortable enough being vulnerable with the people that they care about, or just even by yourself. Sometimes it's difficult to be vulnerable even with yourself and to admit that you're sad, or to admit that you're going through something challenging, or that you're angry, you're frustrated, or you're worried or scared. And so my hope is that with me sharing that, not only do you feel comfortable being vulnerable with people that you care about and expressing that vulnerability towards others, but more importantly, if you're not there yet, you're comfortable expressing that vulnerability behind closed doors when it's just you and God and the air around you, and that's it. So let's go ahead and jump into today's topic: healthy relationships and being aware of the company that you keep. So being aware of the company that you keep is important for a few reasons. And the first one is, I'm a firm believer in birds of a feather. I'm a firm believer in birds of a feather flock together. I just feel like when you surround yourself with people, you're only going to become a version of that person, right? If I surround myself with people who are rooted in their faith, who want to uplift people, who are financially secure, who work in a field that I'm interested in, whatever the case may be, right? It's only a matter of time before I become a reflection of that person if I'm already not a reflection of that person. And if I start surrounding myself with people who drink a lot, who smoke a lot, who go to the club all the time, who are irresponsible with their money, it's only a matter of time before one of two options. Either I become a version of that, or I become resentful of the people that I surrounded myself with. And that's just still not the best scenario either, because you don't want to be resentful of the people that you're surrounding yourself with. That's just not fair to you. That's not fair to them. Everybody is on their own different journey. And so I just feel like when you surround yourself with a certain type of people, you become a version of that person, or you become resentful of the version that you do not want to be. And that's just still not the best situation that you want to be in. The second reason that I think that the people you surround yourself with is so important is because when you're going through something difficult, you want to be surrounded by people who are going to uplift you, who are going to love you, support you, listen to you, and they'll see you at the most darkest point of your life, and they won't use that against you, and they won't change their view of you just because they see that version of yourself. When I found out that I had polycystic kidney disease, I was one of the worst versions of myself, and that's how I felt, at least, and that's how I viewed myself. I was very depressed. I was very just didn't want anything to do with anyone. Always sad all the time, always crying, and just looking at things in such a negative way. And that's fair. That's valid. You know, I got a scary diagnosis. I didn't really know what could be next for me, so I expected that kind of reaction from myself. But to be able to run to people and lean on people who are so loving and supportive and caring is just another level of love, because instead of being met with negativity and being kicked while I was down, I was met with people who were positive, who were praying for me, who were uplifting me, who were sending me messages, even though they knew that I just didn't want to talk. They were supportive of the fact that I needed space, but they still said, you know, when you're ready, I'm here for you. But I just wanted to let you know that I was thinking about you. I just wanted to check in and make sure that you're okay. You respond to this whenever you have the time and whenever you feel comfortable enough to do that. And that level of love is just so unmatched, because I've seen and I've received some really unhealthy love before, and it wasn't even love. I wouldn't even call it that, but for lack of a better word, we'll just call it that for now, right? And I've been in those situations, and to be able to be on the other side and have people who genuinely care about me allowed me to get out of that moment of darkness a lot sooner, because I was able to lean on them in such a hard time. And now that I'm out of that and I'm doing a lot better and I'm feeling a little bit more rooted and knowing that, yes, I have this disease, but I'm going to be okay, that doesn't change the way that my family and my friends view me now, right? They don't hold that against me. They don't say, like, you're such a negative person because the way you handled your diagnosis, because there are people out there who are very, very toxic like that. Let me just go ahead and point that out. You don't want to surround yourself with people who are going to take that time where you weren't the best version of yourself and use that as ammunition to gaslight you, to discredit you, to slander your name, to disrespect you. You don't want to be surrounded by people like that. You want to be surrounded by people who can be there for you during the challenging times and still love you and still support you and not see you any differently once you are no longer in that difficult time, or even while you're in that difficult time. I think the other thing that's important to note too is that it's so easy to be there for somebody when they're going through the best parts of their life, when they're at their highest highs and when everything is great. But who is really there for you? Who is really standing beside you when you are at your lowest point, when it feels like you can't take any more? Whoever is still standing by your side during those moments, those are people who genuinely love you and care about you and support you. And those are the type of people you want to keep around. That is the type of company that you want to keep, because you know that those are the healthiest relationships to have. Oh, here's another one. The company that you keep is so important because when you need advice, you're going to go to these people, right? And the last thing you want is to get some trash advice from somebody and apply it, right? Some of us have the self-awareness to know, like, okay, that wasn't the best advice and I'm not going to take it. But sometimes, we go to our friends and we're upset and we're gassed up and, they're giving us terrible advice and we're just taking it and we're like, yeah. And it's like the blind leading the blind, right? Like that's real. That's realistic. But when you are going to somebody and they are intentionally sabotaging you, right? And they're intentionally giving you bad advice and you're in a state of vulnerability and you take it and you act on it, like, that's not cool. That's not okay. That's somebody who doesn't want to see you in a healthy relationship. They don't want to see you win. Whatever the situation is that you're asking for advice, that's not the type of people you want to surround yourself with. And even if you're not going to act on that advice, if you keep hearing the same kind of advice over and over and over and over and over and over again, it's only a matter of time before you feel like, oh, well, this must be the case because I've heard it so many times, right? Like, even just looking at our society, there's so many, and I'm not just going to only talk about women, right? There's so many things that men hear too, but for a second, there's so many things that women hear about, like, oh, find a man with money and he needs to be able to do this and he needs to be able to do that. And like, just above superficial stuff, like, just very toxic. Like, you need to get a man with money so that he could take you on these expensive dates and he needs to be paying all your bills and this, that, and the third. And mind you, this is not even your man. This is just somebody that you're looking to put on a roster like that. And even just that whole roster ideology is just, all that advice. That's because people keep perpetuating that over and over and over and over again. And now it's become popular and it's become quote unquote cute. And people keep taking that advice when it's really not the best advice, in my opinion. And I'm not shading anybody if they do take that advice, to each their own. Everybody's life is their own. But that advice just keeps getting perpetuated to the point where now people believe that that's the case. People believe that that's true. And so they take that advice, even though it's not the best. And that advice isn't necessarily coming from a sound mind or from somebody who has your best interest at heart. They might think that they do, but in reality, they don't if they're giving you that kind of advice. The same thing goes for men, right? If men are saying that, there's no good women out there, and they just keep saying that and saying that and saying that and saying that and saying that, and they keep saying there's no good women because they want to take all their money and they want this and they want that and whatever. If you keep hearing that advice over and over and over again, it becomes perpetuated, and now people are taking in that advice and they're thinking that they're doing something positive for their life, but again, it's harmful. And that was the best example that I could possibly give you. But just be careful about the people that you surround yourself with, especially when you are going to them for advice. And on top of that, when you're vulnerable, there could be times where you're going to them for advice about something and you're not in a vulnerable state of like, oh, should I take this job or this job? Or when you're in a vulnerable state of like, I don't know if I should still keep this relationship with so-and-so because of X, Y, and Z. Just be mindful that the company that you keep is going to have an impact on your life. They're going to have some sort of impact on the decisions that you make, whether you think they do or not. I promise you that they will, because if you go to them and you talk to them about anything, that has some sort of sway on what you do next. All right, let's move into the next section, which is just talking about how can you tell if you're in a healthy relationship. I think that there are a lot of relationships that are not healthy that are hiding underneath a mask. And I've been in some of those relationships, right? And I'm not just talking about romantic, I'm talking about friendships, and I'm also talking about family relationships where I thought things were cool, I thought things were okay, or I kind of just brushed away some red flags, and it took some growing up and it took some new friends and some new experiences to understand that I was in some terrible, unhealthy relationships. So I have a list of how you can tell if your relationship is healthy or not. And, there's like 12 things on here. Oh, no, 10. There's like 10 things on here. So just be aware of that. I am going to read all of them because I need you to know all of them. So let's just go through the list. So how can you tell if your relationship is healthy? Most important, number one, you feel safe emotionally, mentally, physically, and I'm also going to put spiritually, right? Make sure that you're comfortable talking about God with whoever you're in a relationship with or whatever it is that you believe in. Making sure that you're not afraid to be vulnerable and express who you are, or that you can disagree with them without fear of judgment or retaliation. Number two, you can be your authentic self. You don't need to shrink who you are because of who you're surrounding yourself with. You don't need to perform to be accepted. You can just be you unapologetically. Number three, there's open and honest communication. You can talk through disagreements without turning it into a toxic argument or receiving the silent treatment. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of stonewalling, but that's essentially the silent treatment. It's like when they put up this wall and they try to keep you out as much as possible with the silent treatment because you're going through something, you're having an argument, you're disagreeing. So the silent treatment and stonewalling are pretty much the same thing. Number four, mutual respect is always present. You both value each other's thoughts, boundaries, time, and needs, even when you don't fully agree. That's the most important thing, right? You're never gonna always agree with the people that you love, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? That doesn't mean that you have an unhealthy relationship. It is healthy to disagree on certain things. Just keeping in mind that when you disagree, you still have that mutual respect for each other regardless. You support each other's growth. They encourage your dreams, healing, and personal evolution. They don't make you feel guilty for wanting more. I'm gonna leave my comment for later. 6, you both take accountability. When someone messes up, they acknowledge it, they apologize, and they actively work to change, not just shift the blame or gaslight you. Accountability is a big thing for me. As somebody who works with 10 and 11-year-olds right now, I've been trying to teach them that, understanding like when you know that you've harmed somebody or you know that you've done something wrong, just acknowledge that, take accountability for that, and change. Being a teacher gives me a lot of experiences to learn about day-to-day life, right? You would never think that with me spending so much time with 10 and 11-year-olds that I would be able to learn something that I could apply to my adult relationship, but that's just so not true. I learned so many new things every day, and I think the biggest thing is like how important accountability is to me, not just with them, but more importantly like with other relationships around me as well. If you've done something to me and I articulate that and I say, hey, like you hurt my feelings and I really don't appreciate that, and you see where I'm coming from and you take accountability for that and you work to change, because that's the most important part, right? You could take accountability all day and then still do it. What's the point? And you take that opportunity to change. That's just so important to me, because to feel validated in what somebody has done to you and they work to change that, it's just reassurance that they care about you and they don't want to harm you. If they don't take accountability for that, they gaslight you, they blame you instead, that's just a sign that it's not the healthiest relationship and they probably aren't the healthiest person for you to be around. 7, you feel seen and heard. Your emotions, concerns, and wins aren't brushed off. They're received with care and attention. 8, you have space to grow independently. Healthy relationships don't require constant attachment. They allow room for individuality, friendships, and personal time. 9, you trust each other. There's no need for constant checking, guessing, or walking on eggshells. Trust is built, not forced. That one sounds a little more like romantic, but the same thing goes for like friendships and family as well. I think that we put a lot more pressure on romantic relationships because you're building a life with that person. You're going to share a home with that person. You may or may not share children with that person. And so I think there's a lot more pressure on making sure that you have the best and healthiest relationships with a romantic partner. But just keep in mind, like, trusting your friends and trusting your family members is just as important. Anybody that you are going to keep in very close proximity to you, that you're going to be very vulnerable with, you want to trust them with whatever it is that you're sharing, and knowing that whatever it is that you divulge to them isn't going to end up in the ears of somebody else. And 10, you experience more peace than chaos. Every relationship has tough moments, but overall you feel emotionally steady, not constantly anxious, drained, or confused. I think that that's so important, because the last thing you want is to always be on edge, always have your cortisol levels up, always be stressed and anxious whenever you're talking to somebody. That's not a healthy relationship. That's not a relationship that you need to have. It's not a sign of love. Just as important as it is to know how you're in a healthy relationship, it's very important to know if you're in an unhealthy relationship. I think especially if you've been in an unhealthy relationship for so long and that is your norm, or you're just so used to seeing that because maybe you grew up that way, it might not be as easy for you to tell that you're in an unhealthy relationship. So again, I'm going to go down the list and I'm going to name everything verbatim of how you can tell if you're in an unhealthy relationship. And if any of these stick out to you, please don't brush it off. Don't let it fly over your head. I really need you to sit with whatever it is that you heard that is triggering you or that is like turning on that light bulb for you, and just pause the episode and really just sit with that for a second. Because I feel like the reason that a lot of unhealthy relationships last so long is because we get so used to sweeping things under the rug that it's not until there's this extreme reason to end your relationship that you finally do, when it really shouldn't take that much. Keep in mind that not all unhealthy relationships look the same, and not all of them are outwardly toxic. That's the most important thing. Some unhealthy relationships can be subtle or can slowly increase on the level of unhealthy as time progresses. As I learn more about relationships, and I spend a lot of time listening to these Reddit story podcasts, I've seen and heard of different examples of unhealthy and toxic relationships, and just from love bombing to the penny method. If you don't know what that is, I feel like that was the right title, but essentially like the penny method is like they give you 100 pennies all at one time, right? So they give you their everything. And it could be the same thing as love bombing, right? They give you their everything, and then they slowly start pulling back, right? They start taking a penny one at a time. And you don't really notice it too much until you're at 70 pennies. You're like, well, dang, I used to have 100 pennies, right? I used to have their all. I used to have all their attention, all their love, all their time. And now I'm kind of just like, I feel that there's a difference. I feel that there's a shift. And you want so desperately to get back to 100 pennies. And so they keep slowly pulling back. So now you're at 70, and then you're at 60, and then you're at 50, and now you're at 40. And when you get to 40, you're kind of seeing the drastic change now. Like there's no hiding that. There's no ignoring that, and you're just begging and begging and begging to get back to the 100 pennies. You're begging to get back to their all. And so they slowly throw you a penny here and there, right? And maybe you're slowly dragging yourself back to 50 pennies. And the max that they'll give you is 60, right? And you're just so happy with the 60 because you used to be at 40 and you've seen what 40 is like. And so you'll take the 60, and you probably already know that you're never going to get the 100 back. You probably know. So that's what the penny method is, right? It's like they give you their all at the beginning, and they slowly start pulling back, and they pull back more and more and more and more and more and more and more until it's undeniable. And then they give you a little bit back, but not too much, because they don't ever want to give you back to the 100%. They're not doing that. So they're just going to give you just enough for you to be okay and satisfied with what they're giving you. But deep down inside, if you really take the time to sit with those emotions and to sit with those feelings, you know you're not happy with what you have, but you'll take it because you're still hoping that one day they'll give you back to 100%. And I'm here to tell you, brutally honestly, they're not gonna. So, how can you tell if you're in an unhealthy relationship? Keep in mind, I'm not an expert, and I don't have everything on this list. Number 1, you constantly feel drained or anxious around them. Your nervous system is always on edge, even if you can't explain why. Number 2, you don't feel safe expressing your true feelings. Your fear of being judged, mocked, gaslit, or ignored if you speak up. Number 3, your boundaries are ignored or disrespected. You've tried to set limits, but they push back. They'll guilt trip you. They act offended when you advocate for yourself. Number 4, it feels one-sided. You're always pouring in emotionally, financially, energetically, but you don't receive the same in return. 5, you feel like you're walking on eggshells. You overthink every text, conversation, or action because their reactions are unpredictable or explosive. Baby, if you're experiencing number 5, please go ahead and pack your bags and leave. Walking around on eggshells is not it. And it's not until that situation is out of your space, when you finally walked away from that you get to see the freedom. And you don't necessarily notice that you're walking on eggshells until you're gone. And that's the hardest part about it, because you've lived with walking on eggshells for so long that that's become your norm. And it's not until you step outside and there are no eggshells anymore that you finally have a breath of fresh air. You realize, like, this is what it's like. I don't have to worry about my tone when I say things or how I dress or whatever the case may be. If you're experiencing that, just go ahead and do yourself a favor and gracefully bow out. Number 6, they minimize or dismiss your experiences. When you open up about how something hurts you, they say that you're quote unquote too sensitive or that you are overreacting. I hate that. I hate that so much. I'm sorry. I just had to say that. 7, you feel smaller when you're around them. They belittle your dreams, downplay your success, or make backhanded comments about your growth. let's just sit with number 7 for a second. Okay. Now that I'm in healthy relationships and now that I'm grown and I understand the difference between a healthy and an unhealthy relationship, I can 100% wholeheartedly say that number 7 was pretty much the type of relationships that I always ended up in. They would belittle me. They would make me the butt of the joke. They would downplay like what I wanted to do. Right, like I had a friend, I remember I have a serious problem with sugar, and I'm not even going to sit up in here and lie to you. Like, it's so bad. Okay, a sweet treat will have me in a chokehold body slam combo. But I remember I was working out a lot, and I was training really hard, and I was like, I'm not going to eat sugar for this week and slowly start increasing that time because I want to get rid of this hold on sugar. And I did really well for that time period, but I ended up getting back to my sugar problem. But nonetheless, right, I think it was like the second day that I had started that, and this person comes up to me. Mind you, they don't even like chocolate. They come up to me and they bring me this like chocolate croissant, and I don't like that either. That's not my vibe. But they were like, "Oh, you have to try this. You have to try this. It looks so good." And I was like, "No, I don't want to try it. I told you that I wasn't eating sugar, and I don't think that this is gonna be good." No, you gotta try. You gotta try. You gotta try. Like just forcing it, dragging it. And I was like, well, if it's so good, why don't you eat it? No, I don't really want it, but you should try it. You should try it. I think you're going to really like it. Da-da-da-da. And they would not take no for an answer. So I just said, all right, I'm going to take it and I'm going to go try it. And they leave. And as soon as they leave, I throw it in the garbage because it was just like, they clearly weren't going to take no for an answer. They clearly wanted to sabotage my success. So I just took it and I threw it away. And I was just like, this is not a friend to you. Like, they know that you've struggled with body image issues and stuff like that for so long, and they see that you're making this progress and that you're doing so well. And so instead of being supportive in that, they try to sabotage it. And that just hurt my feelings so much because it's just like, you know about my insecurity. I was vulnerable to you about my insecurity, and instead of being supportive in the fact that I'm working towards correcting that, you're trying to sabotage me. You want me to be insecure. You want me to be sad and uncomfortable in my own skin for forever, it felt like at that time. And I'm just like, wow, like that's a terrible friend. Like that's just so low down and foul. And then it made me think like to the extreme of like, what if I was somebody who was an alcoholic, right? Because this person is somebody who drank. If I was an alcoholic and I hung out with them, would you push me to drink alcohol? Like, it just really made me think about it. And that's kind of how I figured, like, this is not a good friend. And I don't want to have a friend like that. Number 8, they try to control your choices. This can be subtle, manipulation or guilt, or overt, demanding, isolating, and threatening. I just want you to know that with control, and I've mostly seen this in romantic relationships, but like with control, like this example said, sometimes it can be very subtle, or it can be very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? Very obvious, right? And if you're somebody who is in the subtle category, let me just explain to you what that looks like, right? If you say you want to go out with your friends and you tell whoever, let's just use the partner example, right? You tell your partner you want to go out with your friends, and all of a sudden, right before you go out, they're sick, and I need you to stay because I just don't feel so good, whatever, and you end up staying, and now all of a sudden, every time you're about to go out, oh, I don't feel too good, I need you to stay. That's an example of control in a subtle form, right? It's obviously not a standing in front of the door saying you can't leave. That's a subtle tactic for them to be able to control you, right? It's not the same thing as standing in front of the door and saying you can't leave the house, but it's more so like a way of controlling your time, right? Controlling your ability to leave the house and just saying like, oh, I need you to stay, and isolating you from those other people that you're going to spend time with, whether it's friends or family, whatever the case may be. That's I don't know which is scarier. I honestly feel like that's a little bit scarier because once they get you that first time, I feel like from the examples that I've seen, I haven't really experienced this. It just becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger over time before it becomes that obvious example of like, you can't go because they're not good friends to you. Just be careful. Number 9, there's a lack of trust. You can't rely on them to be honest, to show up consistently, or to respect your privacy. 10, they weaponize your love, loyalty, or your history. And we have 2 more. 11, you don't like who you are when you're with them. You feel off, reactive, or like you've lost parts of yourself in the process of trying to keep the peace. And 12, your healing keeps getting interrupted. Every time you try to move forward, they trigger old wounds or they pull you back into chaos. Okay, let's talk about how you can set up boundaries to protect your peace in a genuine way. And I did do an episode about boundaries, so feel free to go and look into that. I'm sure some of these points are probably the same. I didn't get a chance to cross-reference the scripts, but I still want to just talk about that because I want to also highlight the importance of including family in terms of boundaries. I feel like there's a lot of, oh, but they're family, but that's your mom, or that's your sister, or that's your uncle, or blah, 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 blah. And, you know, blood is thicker than water and all of that extra stuff. And I don't believe in that. I don't buy into that narrative. Wrong is wrong is wrong is wrong, right? Regardless of who does it to you or why they did it to you, wrong is wrong. And so if somebody is constantly violating your boundaries or making you feel guilty or bad, or you acknowledge that some of these items on the unhealthy list, they're perpetuating onto you, it's time to start setting some boundaries. The first thing you can do is get clear on what it is that you need and what it is that you will and will not allow. For example, I know that in whatever relationships that I get into or whatever relationships I'm willing to reopen, I need to be supported. And what support looks like for me is somebody who is going to listen to me without responding, somebody who is going to show up for me in the good and the bad times, somebody who's going to support my dreams. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they need to do that with money, right? They can do that with words of affirmation. They can do that with just showing up for whatever it is that I need them to show up for. And I have a list of what that looks like for me. I also know what it is that I will not tolerate, and I will not tolerate somebody calling me out of my name and disrespecting me. I will not tolerate somebody putting their hands on me. I will not tolerate somebody who is belittling my dreams or belittling me and trying to make me feel small. That is not what I'm going to tolerate. So get clear on what it is that you need, what it is that you will tolerate, and what it is that you're not going to tolerate. That's the first thing you can do before you do anything else. Number 2, start small and be direct. I grew up in a household where people just raise their voice all the time, and I don't even like yelling. Like, I try to avoid it as much as possible. So it'll be something simple as like, do not yell at me. I don't like when you raise your voice at me. That's the boundary. That's it. Very simple, right? And it's direct. A lot of people take directness for rudeness, and there's a very huge difference. And honestly, I can't perfectly articulate the difference, but me being direct and just saying like, do not raise your voice at me, I don't like when you do that, that's just me letting you know what it is that I don't like and what it is that I do not want you to do. I didn't call you out your name. I did not disrespect you. I did not say anything about you. I just told you what it is that I didn't like. And that's just me being direct. When you do this, you need to be as direct as possible. Do not leave any room for interpretation, because somebody who is toxic or somebody who is unhealthy, they will take that room for interpretation and run with that. So be as straightforward as you can possibly be. Number 3, remember your boundaries are to protect you. People will not always understand your boundaries, nor will they always agree with them. That is okay, right? Your boundaries, again, they are for you. They're not for other people. They don't have to agree with them. They don't have to respect them. They don't have to understand them. That's just reality. And that might come across as harsh, but that's truth, right? If they love you and they care about you and they support you, they will do all those things. They will understand them. They will respect them. They will follow them. They will do whatever it is they need to do because they care about you. But at the end of the day, if they are unhealthy and if they're toxic, you're going to find out pretty quickly if you set some boundaries with them. At the end of the day, keep this in mind. Your boundaries are a set of consequences that you have in mind if somebody disrespects you and disrespects what you will and will not tolerate. You cannot control them. You cannot force them. You cannot change them. They have to do that for themselves. Be prepared for a reaction. Unhealthy people will not like that you're setting boundaries and limiting their access to you. Be prepared for a response in a negative way, whether it's guilt tripping, gaslighting, or dismissiveness. And when you receive a negative reaction, because you will, make sure that you stand firm on that, because they are looking for any sign of weakness to take you down from your boundaries. They will look for a way to try and cut off your boundaries and you standing up for yourself. They'll try to guilt trip you by saying, oh, but you're being disrespectful, or why are you doing this? You were never doing this before, or dismissiveness of like, whatever, it's not that big a deal. It's you're just overreacting. Whenever you hear that, you stand firm and you say, this is just how I plan to move from now on. I don't like when somebody blah, 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 regardless of who they are. This is my boundary. If you don't like it, that's perfectly fine. We don't have to argue about it. Just know that I will, whatever your consequences, insert here. I don't like when people raise their voice at me. If somebody decides that they're going to raise their voice at me, I will be prepared to distance myself from them. If they continue to raise their voice at me, knowing full and well that I do not like to be yelled at or to have their voice raised at me, I will cut them off. Simple. It comes across as so harsh, and I always feel hyper aware of being direct because people take my directness for disrespect, and it's just like I'd rather be perceived as disrespectful than get walked all over. At the end of the day, my boundaries are set to protect me, and there are set consequences in case somebody disrespects me, and I need to stand firm on that, and I need to articulate that in a direct way. Be consistent. Especially when you're first introducing a boundary to somebody, you need to be consistent because they're looking and they're watching and they're seeing if you really meant what you said, or is it just that you're suddenly standing up for yourself this one time. And you need to show them that you genuinely meant what you said and you said what you meant. And also, if you feel or if you find yourself constantly repeating your boundaries to somebody, you need to let them know, I mean what I'm saying. That's why I'm going to keep telling you what it is, because you think that it's going to change and it's not. Distance is okay. Sometimes you need to distance yourself from people to maintain healthy relationships and a healthy mental state, and that's okay. I will say, as somebody who doesn't have a close relationship with their biological family, that it is hard. It is hard to distance yourself from people that you just naturally want to have a relationship with. But at the end of the day, that was the best decision I could have ever made for myself. When I was living at home with my biological family and just in such a toxic environment, I was at a point where I was just ready to click the end button on my life and just call it a day. And I was just in such an unhealthy mental state. And I'm at a point now where that's not even a thought in my mind, and that's because I've distanced myself from that negativity and from that environment. There's two versions that I've been hearing a lot of lately, like low contact and no contact. I'm in the category of no contact, but this wasn't something that I was really thinking about. It's just something that I did. But recently, like, I'm starting to hear this language a little bit more. And low contact is essentially like you talk to them a little bit here and there, you're still in contact with them. Maybe you go to family gatherings on occasion. That is like a low contact relationship. No contact is very obvious. You're not going to family gatherings. You're not talking to them on the phone. You're not celebrating birthdays. You're not doing any of that stuff. And that's the category that I fall into. And that was my choice. As soon as I had an opportunity to go no contact, I took it and ran with it. And here and there, I've gone from no contact to low contact. It doesn't mean that you can't change your mind or that situations can't change. God might put it on your heart to reopen this relationship with somebody else, and you find that while things have gotten better, you still feel more comfortable and safer in the low contact area. There's nothing wrong with that. Or vice versa. Maybe you're in the low contact area and you've decided, I can't do this anymore. I've been pushed past my limit. I need to go no contact. Regardless of what pool you're in, it can be very difficult, especially with family relationships, because, birthdays roll around, holidays roll around, and I don't really have any friends who have the same kind of family dynamic that I have. So it's always just like, well, why can't I spend time with my biological family for my birthday or for holidays? And it's difficult still, even though I know that it's the best decision that I could have made for myself. At the end of the day, like, that's not necessarily the norm, to not be loved by your family or to not have a loving relationship with your family. And so going no contact, even though it was the best decision I could have ever made, and I wouldn't take it back and I wouldn't trade it, and I'm not changing my mind on that at this point in time, that doesn't mean that it's not hard. For anybody who has recently gone low contact or no contact with their family, I just want to take a moment to really address with you, like, it is challenging. Maybe your first holiday had just passed, or your first birthday had just passed, where you're low or no contact, and it's difficult, right? And you're reopening those wounds and you're revisiting that trauma. I just want to make you aware of the fact that you made the best decision for yourself, and it may not feel that way right now. It may feel very difficult, very isolating, but I promise you made the best decision that you ever could for yourself, because at the end of the day, you chose your mental health, your spiritual health, your emotional and your physical health over anything else, over somebody walking all over you, dismissing you, belittling you, and you chose to love yourself first, even if that meant cutting off people that you care about, because that can be difficult when you care about them, but they don't care about you enough to stop the behavior that is hurting your relationship. My heart definitely goes out to you for the people who are low or no contact with family specifically. That's hard, especially when you come from a society, depending on where you're from, where family is such a big thing. I don't feel like family is as big of a thing in the US as it is in other countries. And I grew up in a Latino household where family is supposed to be the most important thing of all. I promise you, you made the best decision for yourself. And if you don't see it now, I promise you will see the fruits of your labor later. Continue to work on yourself, continue to love yourself, grow who you are as a person, and find those people who genuinely love you. Find those people who have genuinely healthy relationships with you. Look back at the list that I talked about. I will leave it listed somewhere for you to find it again. If those people that you are in relationships with, platonic, family, romantic, whatever, if they check off all those boxes, the majority of those boxes, I didn't list everything, right? Those are the people you want to stick around. And it doesn't matter if they're blood or not. A lot of people keep saying like blood is thicker than water, but they're family. But if they're running you down to the ground, regardless of who they are, what difference does it make if you share a little bit of DNA? Choose people who are going to love you, support you, uplift you, accept you for who you are, regardless of whether or not you share DNA. Choose yourself enough and love yourself enough to know that blood doesn't dictate that. Blood isn't the negator for that. And if they don't love you and you share DNA, you do not have to love them back in this way. Or you can love them from a distance. All right, y'all, we are at the point where we've reached the affirmation for this week's episode. And the affirmation for this week is, it's okay to outgrow relationships that no longer reflect my values. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat that 3 times. If you have the ability to close your eyes, close your eyes. If you want to write this down, however you want to speak this positivity onto your life, find a way to do it. So, it's okay to outgrow relationships that no longer reflect my values. It's okay to outgrow relationships that no longer reflect my values. It's okay to outgrow relationships that no longer reflect my values. All right, y'all, that is all I have for you this week. Let me know what your thoughts are about this topic of healthy relationships and just being aware of the company that you keep. I hope that you guys have a great week. If you are not following us on social media, you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok, both at the HSL Pod. I leave some shadow work journal prompts for you on there, some affirmations for you on there, just a little bit of other stuff occasionally that's not on the podcast. If you want to follow me in my day-to-day regular life, you can follow me on Instagram and TikTok, both at Sabrina, SABRINA.LIZET on those platforms. And if you are not subscribed to us on other platforms, we are on all streaming platforms, all audio platforms, Google Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube, and whatever else there is out there. We're on all of those things. So make sure you follow us on whatever the best platform is for you. And if you like this podcast, if you like the sound of my voice, if you like this face, if you can see this face, go ahead and rate us 5 stars and leave a review. Let me know what your thoughts are on this podcast. If you're on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. But that's all I have for you, and I will see you next week. Bye.